Welcome to the Dynamics of Everyday Life, where we demystify some tricky concepts and get to know ourselves a little bit better. Welcome back to the Dynamics of Everyday Life. Last week we were exploring the ideas around why we put on our armour and the boundaries that might need a bit of work to help keep us feeling safe. Today I'm looking at one way that we can help keep ourselves protected, but's often either overlooked or not used to its full extent. And that's the concept that no is a complete sentence. One term that's often used is that of people-pleasing. I understand why we use this phrase, but sometimes I feel, as I do with a lot of descriptions of human behaviour today, that it's a bit meaningless unless we break it down into what it actually means for us. It can be easy to label a behaviour and then say, well, you know what your problem is, you're people-pleasing. And then we take away this phrase as if it's a golden nugget of wisdom. But unless we can personalise it for ourselves and know how it applies to us and how it fits into who we are, it's going to stay as a superficial statement that really doesn't help us move forward at all. So what's happening when we're not using no as a complete sentence? Let's look at the example of two people having a conversation about what they're going to do next weekend. Let's call these friends Sean and Roger. Sean says to Roger, I've got a great idea. Let's go into central London next weekend. We can go for dinner, then to a show, and then maybe finish the night at a club. Roger doesn't want to do this. He won't have been paid by next weekend, but he doesn't want to say to Sean that he's short on funds. He's also trying to keep fit, so he doesn't want to eat a big dinner and drink a lot of alcohol. And the last time they went out together to a club, Sean spent all the time talking to a woman and dancing with her and her friends, whilst Roger stood alone at the bar and didn't speak to anyone. However, Sean and Roger are good friends, and Roger knows that Sean would like to go out and have fun. The key point here is that Roger doesn't want to upset Sean by saying no to him. Roger struggles with having many good friends and thinks that if he upsets Sean, he's then putting that friendship at risk. He also doesn't want to feel like a bad person for saying no. Roger has been trying to say no a bit more recently, but because he feels awful about saying no, he then ends up justifying and rationalising his no. It ends up coming out a bit like, well, obviously I'd really like to, but I'm trying to save up for my mum's birthday present. You know she's got a milestone birthday coming up. And I'm not sure if she wants me to mow the lawn for her that weekend. And the dog will need to go to the vet. I think I've also got the landlord coming round to look at the repairs that need to be done to the roof. And I'll need to do my food shopping. I've not got much in, you know. So it's probably not the best time for me to come out next weekend. This really does sound like an excuse. And the reason Roger has given so many of these reasons is because he knows that if he just says to Sean one of the reasons, then Sean will come up with a way around it. The hole that Roger is digging for himself is getting deeper and deeper at this point. It's much simpler to say no, or no thanks, but that doesn't work for me. Now it might be that Sean keeps on at Roger because he's learnt that if he keeps pushing, he generally gets what he wants. But in an ideal world, as Roger gets more and more confident in saying no, without having to explain this, Sean will come round to the idea that no is what he means. And Roger will feel more secure that in saying no, he hasn't broken their friendship irretrievably. Obviously, there are situations where this won't be the case, and in these moments it might be helpful to consider whether actually the friendship or relationship is one that we want to continue, if our no and our boundaries cannot be respected. So what's going on here? Why is this happening? What we are doing is justifying or rationalising our reasons for saying no. Rationalisation is one of the key defence mechanisms. Remember, we use defence mechanisms when we're feeling anxious at a perceived threat and our ego leaps into action to help us keep safe. Rationalisation is where we give reasons or attempt to explain why we're making the decisions that we are, particularly if it's going against what other people either think we will do or expect or hope we will do. Rationalisation as a defence mechanism in this scenario happens because we feel unsafe stating what we really think or feel. We think that the other person is either going to be harmed by us having a different opinion or a different desire to them, or that the relationship or our position in the relationship is going to be harmed by us stating what we want. and that might be at odds with the other person. We feel that we need to find reasons for why we're saying no. We want to make the other person understand where we're coming from, or at the very least not think less of us. This can be something that's been installed in us unconsciously from our early relationships. If we were ever made to feel responsible for someone else's happiness, or if we have been in relationships where the other person has projected blame for how they felt into us, rationalisation can become a defence mechanism of choice. It provides a wall against the other person's desires, wishes and possible frustration at us not giving them what they want. And when we rationalise, we feel that we're providing an extra layer of safety and security. But this isn't true. We think that we're building a wall of safety, and what actually happens is that we're just giving the other person something to take down. It can become like a game. We put the wall up, the other person takes it down, which then becomes an uncomfortable dynamic to get caught up in. Whereas a clear no gives no bricks in a wall to be taken down. It's a line in the sand, not to be crossed. It's also more of a clear boundary. If the other person hears a lot of rationalisations or excuses, what they might do is look for chinks in that wall, ways that can be got through the wall for them to get what they want. And this can be a challenge or even fun for them. When they get through the wall, they feel a sense of achievement, whilst you end up feeling deflated. We can sometimes end up saying yes in the end when we really wanted to say no, because either we didn't want to upset the other person or they found reasons why our rationalisations could be argued against. So we end up going along with what they want and can feel resentful or cross at ourselves for not holding our ground. A straightforward no is much clearer and provides very little room for manoeuvre. A great example of a clear no can be seen in the Bond film Quantum of Solace. It's not my favourite James Bond film, but it does illustrate this point quite well. Bond is taken with Fields and Mathis to a rundown hotel, which obviously does not fit his lifestyle or expectations of how he lives on a mission. He leaves without saying anything. Fields rushes out and says to him that their teacher's on a sabbatical and it fits their cover. Bond stares at her and says in an extremely clear voice, "No, it doesn't," and takes them to a much more glamorous hotel, saying to the receptionist, "We're teachers on a sabbatical who have just won the lottery." There's no messing around in this situation. He knew what his boundaries were, stated his no clearly, and there was no room for negotiation. One of the key reasons that we don't like to say no to people is that we feel by having boundaries that we're keeping people at bay, that we're stopping people from being close to us and knowing who we are. However, in being clear what we do and don't want to do, we're actually showing people who we are and what we stand for, and this means that people do get to know us and understand us better. Ironically, by having strong boundaries, it means that we can be closer to people, or at least more of the right people, as the only people who don't like us having boundaries are the ones who benefit from that the most. And do we really want more of that in our lives? My invitation for you this week is for you to consider where in your life do you want to be saying no as a complete sentence more. Where do you say no? Only then to follow it up with many reasons and rationalisations for saying no. Where do you start off by saying no, give a lot of reasons why not, and then find yourself argued out of your decision by someone else? How can you practice with a clear and straightforward no and feel secure in this? Looking at ourselves at this level can be challenging and unnerving as we develop our awareness, so I'd always encourage that you do this at your own speed. If you feel you need some extra help around this, then I've put together a PDF resource sheet and you can find the link for this in the show notes. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Dynamics of Everyday Life. Please hit the follow button for future episodes and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow me on Instagram at The Dynamics of Everyday Life or find me on LinkedIn at Julia Rogers. I'd love to hear from you and hear your thoughts on dynamics. The Dynamics of Everyday Life is brought to you by Coaching 42 and the fabulous team at the Podcast Boutique.